Alrighty, hey everybody. So I hope you had a great weekend. Things are starting to open up and going out to eat may become more of a regular thing for you. I'm sure many of you have been in the habit of ordering in as well, so these tips apply to that too. While it's ideal to try to cook from home, sometimes that just doesn't happen and we can splurge a little bit. I believe in the 80-20 rule, 80% of the time eating according to a healthy plate, balanced meals, and 20% of the time indulging. However, if eating out becomes more of our weekly, daily routine, it's important that we have things to kind of keep us on track. So I'm going to pull this up and I ask that you follow along with me. With your smartphones and having internet, I highly recommend looking up the menu ahead of time. Oftentimes, restaurants are required to post the nutrition online so you can get an idea, making sure that you're choosing a high protein, high fiber meal that doesn't have a ton of sodium. Those are great things to do. So once you've come up with a meal that you feel is good, go ahead and stick with that plan. Not necessarily looking for the lowest calorie food on the menu, but again, looking for high protein. I think you'll find sometimes the salads or things like that are actually higher calorie, but really look at the other nutrients too. Do not just focus on the calories because we could be filling ourselves with empty calories and not a whole lot of other nutrition. So bread might have fewer calories than, let's say, a quinoa bowl, but the quinoa bowl is going to have a lot more protein and other nutrients versus that bread. Okay, so hand method of portion control. I will post that too. So remember, palm size of protein up to about the fingertip. We can do 4 to 6 ounces of our meat. Then our starches are going to be no more than a fist. Okay, so that's our rice, beans, corn, quinoa, potatoes, things like that. We don't want any more than a cup of that. And then our fats, so about 2 thumbs from the fingertip or from the middle of the knuckle to the top of the fingertip, okay? So those would be things like our oils, butter, and I know that's probably a little bit harder to measure when you're eating out, so that's why I'll kind of get into some other ways that you can be mindful of that. So getting a salad instead of an appetizer. So maybe, instead of those Caesar salads that are filled with cheese and croutons, maybe it's more of a full-on veggie salad. Veggies and hummus are a really common one. Roasted Brussels sprouts. I think some restaurants will have like roasted cauliflower or buffalo cauliflower. Those are things that we can do. There's nothing really wrong with pita bread. Just make sure that you're not overdoing it with the pita bread. Salsa, is great, but if we're doing a ton of chips, 9 chips is going to be 1 carb serving. So if you are adding the tortilla and the rice and the beans and the corn, that's really going to get you up on your carbohydrates. And we know that excess carbohydrate intake leads to excess fat storage. So just kind of be aware of that. So I do get into the salads. Croutons, cheese, bacon, creamy dressings. Really be careful with that. Vinaigrettes or oils are going to be better, and asking for those items on the side. Guacamole on the side. These are our fats, and fats have our most calories per gram. So it's okay that we have these. They're not necessarily bad, but oftentimes the salads and the items will not be served on the side and they'll be drenched. So really be aware of how much you're using. Try not to use more than half of whatever cup of dressing or sauce that is given to you. A lot of times they may give you 2 or 3 different containers, but remember, it's probably going to be about 100 calories per container you're putting on your item. So maybe you're okay with a full one. Just kind of be aware of that. Especially if you're tracking, how much you're allotted. We do have about 200 to 300 kind of forgiving calories, but just remember, or discretionary calories that I call them, but just remember, if you tend to splurge a little bit more throughout the week, you may be less likely to hit your goal of losing 1 or 2 pounds a week, depending on what we've discussed or what we've created for us. Choosing a protein-based entree. Oftentimes grilled or steamed is going to be really good. Sub-out sides for non-starchy vegetables, such as broccoli, asparagus, roasted cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, as I had mentioned. Those could potentially be an appetizer item as well. So those are always very good to do. You know, salmon, grilled chicken, even pork chops are relatively lean. Ask for a box when you have the food first delivered to your table, especially if you are doing like a steak or something like that. You want to do about, you want to portion about half the food as soon as you get the food um, delivered to you. So cut it in half, put it in the box, leave it in the box, and then eat the other half of the food. If you need to walk it to your car because you're worried about eating it out of the box right then and there, do it. I know that might be a little extreme for some of you, but some of us need to do that. If we do order, let's say, a sandwich or a burger, eating one bun or no bun might be good, especially if it's more of a white or a brioche bun. If we're doing more of the whole grain, it's still going to have the same amount of calories and carbohydrates, but a little bit more nutrients. So if you do have like a whole grain bun or something like that, I don't necessarily encourage you to not eat that. But especially with the white, refined, processed carbohydrates, I recommend kind of going lighter on the buns and the breading. Uh, um, when you are at Mexican, Indian, or Asian restaurants, ask if there's an option for brown rice. It's just a little bit more fiber, a little bit more nutrients, but we're still sticking to no more than a cup. Some of you may find a half cup is just fine. So just being aware of that, and remember, if we're adding any other starches, we need to decrease the amount of rice to which we're eating. So if we're adding in black beans, we're adding in corn, maybe it's a third cup of the corn, a third cup of the beans, a third cup of the rice. And obviously you're not able to measure that, but to give you an idea, so about half of a cup would be this knuckle here. So you can kind of eyeball it, use your spoons and things to kind of divvy that out for yourself. And I'm not expecting you to really agonize over this while you're eating. You will get better as you continue to practice it. Don't be afraid to ask for half portions or half scoops of your rice or starches when you're in line at Chipotle or BB Bop or wherever you like to go. Other things, if you're doing sushi, try a roll with seaweed or cucumber instead of rice, or again, see if there's a brown rice option. Rice can get up there in calories if we're doing too much of it. Avoiding sour cream and refried beans and limiting fried foods is something I recommend. If you're taking it home, using plain Greek yogurt in place of that sour cream, much more protein, a lot less saturated fat, which is not great for the heart. So definitely try that out instead. Choosing one complex starch. This is what I was talking about before. If you're doing potatoes, if you're doing beans, if you're doing quinoa, if you're doing rice, choose one or reduce the amount if you're doing multiples. Okay, ask for whole wheat pasta at Italian restaurants or wherever. See if there's a whole wheat pasta option. Gluten-free options are oftentimes going to be higher in calories, so just be aware of that. Some of you may actually need a gluten-free option, or maybe you just look for a lower carb option in general. Make one side a non-starchy vegetable. I had mentioned that before. Vegetables, vegetables, vegetables. A lot fewer calories, much more nutrients. Okay. Limiting alcohol consumption to less than 7 drinks per week, okay? Try to sip and pace. So to give you an idea, moderate